what on earth do you think you're doing? Uh, we're looking at a U.S. economy that, this morning's jobs report was really good. Everything is kind of coming up roses. It's soft landing everywhere. And yet he's preparing, or claims he's preparing, to go on this trade war against everybody. And the question really is why? What is it? Why do you want to do something so disruptive when you're inheriting an economy that is really...
What if your next grocery bill skyrocketed overnight? What if your paycheck didn't stretch as far as it used to? A new trade war is brewing, and it's not just about politics, it's about your wallet. Let's break it down. The global economy is at a crossroads, and a storm is brewing that threatens severe consequences for all. On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on America's three largest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China, marking a significant shift in the country's trade policy. For Canada and Mexico, the response has been more diplomatic. They've signaled a willingness to work with Washington, agreeing to implement tougher border controls and stricter drug policies. But China? That's a different story. The world's second-largest economy isn't backing down. Instead, it has fired back with its own set of tariffs, triggering concerns that this tit-for-tat retaliation could spiral into a full-blown trade war. Here's a short clip from American economist and Nobel laureate Paul Krugman.
Professor, I do want to start off here as to the effects of these tariffs. The tariffs are already here, and if you believe Trump at his words, they're probably going to increase or at least broaden out to other countries. The damage is to who? Our economy or Mexico, Canada, China, etc.?
All of the above. I mean, you're basically throwing sand in the gears of international commerce and manufacturing, and particularly Canada and Mexico. There is no U.S. manufacturing sector. There's a North American manufacturing sector. It's very, very tightly integrated. Parts, components go back and forth across those borders. Suddenly you're going to put 25% tariffs on all of this, and that's really, really destructive. I mean, these are business relationships that have been built up over 30 years. And now you're suddenly making them much more difficult. And it doesn't stop there. At some point, I've been seeing some people saying, okay, Canada and Mexico, as if that won't lead to tariffs on other countries. But the competitiveness of U.S. manufacturing vis-a-vis Japan and Europe would be very gravely hurt by those tariffs. So almost certainly, if Trump goes ahead and does what he says he wants to do, then the tariffs will have to be extended to pretty much the whole world.
In this video, we're going to break down the key details of this trade war, examine how these new tariffs are affecting global markets, and discuss what all of this means for your investments, businesses, and economic outlook. So, whether you're a veteran investor, a business owner, or just someone who wants to understand how these global shifts affect your wallet, you'll want to stick around. Before we dive in, we need your support. You can help our videos reach more interested viewers by taking a few simple steps. Please help us spread the message. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications bell to get instantly notified whenever we upload a new video. We appreciate the support and hope you enjoy the video. Let's get started with a little background. While campaigning last year, U.S. President Donald Trump warned that he would impose tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico. Keeping to his promise, President Trump confirmed a 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican goods, alongside a 10% levy on Chinese imports over the weekend, a move that sent shockwaves through global financial markets on Monday. Following the announcement, financial markets experienced significant volatility. In the U.S., the S&P 500 and NASDAQ composite indices declined, closing by approximately 1.5% and 1.8%, respectively. The Dow Jones Industrial Average also fell, though its decline was slightly less severe at around 1.2%. Major European indices also faced downturns, with Germany's DAX, France's CAC 40, and London's FTSE 100 each dropping between 1% and 1.5%. Automotive stocks were particularly affected due to concerns over increased costs from the tariffs. Major car manufacturers like Volkswagen, BMW, and Daimler saw their shares fall by up to 6%. The cryptocurrency market mirrored the downturn in traditional markets. Bitcoin's price dropped by approximately 6.2%, reflecting broader risk aversion among investors. Other cryptocurrencies dropped even lower. Only gold managed to rise above the carnage, with spot gold reaching $2,830.49 per ounce, a new all-time high, as investors sought safety amid the escalating trade tensions. The initial market turmoil eased slightly after Trump and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum reached a temporary agreement to suspend tariffs on Mexican goods for 1 month. Similarly, a late-night phone call between Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau resulted in a 30-day delay on tariffs targeting Canadian imports. Despite these temporary reprieves, the 10% tariff on Chinese goods has officially taken effect, prompting swift retaliation from Beijing. In response, China has announced countermeasures, imposing tariffs on a range of American products, though these will not be implemented until Monday. Beijing has announced that beginning February 10th, it will impose a 15% tariff on American coal and liquefied natural gas, LNG. A 10% levy will also be applied to U.S. crude oil, agricultural machinery, large displacement vehicles, and pickup trucks. These countermeasures mark a significant escalation in the ongoing trade dispute, further heightening tensions between the world's two largest economies.
15% tax on US coal and 10% on goods such as crude oil, farming equipment, and pickup trucks. They're just some of the US imports that face new Chinese tariffs. China also announced export controls on 5 critical minerals. These are metals that are crucial to technology and innovation. Beijing argues that this is just a response to Washington's actions as the US placed that additional 10% tariff on all Chinese imports first. Washington's official reason behind all of this is the accusation that China just isn't doing enough to stop the fentanyl trade. China's Ministry of Finance responded today in a statement saying the unilateral imposition of tariffs by the United States is not only unhelpful in solving its own problems, but also damaging to the normal economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States.
Regardless of the immediate impact on the global economy and financial markets, President Trump is dead set on his trade policies. He has promised to impose more tariffs, particularly on the European Union, whose nations he has long criticized for not buying enough American cars and farm products. On Sunday, while speaking with reporters, President Trump said that tariffs will definitely happen with the European Union and could come pretty soon. In response, European leaders warned on Monday that a trade war with the United States would destabilize economies on both sides of the Atlantic. However, officials have been clear that tough tariffs from the U.S. on Europe will be met with a collective and robust response. With none of these parties willing to make necessary concessions, experts fear that the world could soon be on the verge of a widespread trade war that will have far-reaching consequences for all parties.
National security issues. There's always been a clause, both in international trade agreements and in our own law, that allows you to use tariffs or other means to protect crucial areas for national security. But that has to be focused. It has to be strategic. And particularly if you're thinking, we've learned from Ukraine, we've learned that the age of great power conflict is not over, but we're not going to have a war with Canada. We're not going to have a war with Mexico. And they are, in fact, effectively, they are part of our industrial base. So by disrupting those relationships, you actually reduce U.S. economic security. You impair U.S. manufacturing capacity compared with that of China.
Right. So
it doesn't make any sense on those grounds.
Is there a scenario where they can work?
Well, look, there are scenarios. And in fact, I and others did a lot on scenarios in which a highly sophisticated more subsidies rather than tariffs, but a highly sophisticated policy of subsidizing strategic industries can work. And in fact, by the way, the Biden administration was doing quite a lot of that. The CHIPS Act and all of that was, in fact, a nationalist industrial policy, but a narrowly targeted one. And the problem with all of these things is that it is very, very hard to be sure what you're doing. It's so easy to end up, you're supposed to be facilitating national security. You're supposed to be promoting technology. And what you end up is just delivering a lot of favors to special interest groups. And that's not a reason never to do it, but it's a reason to be highly suspicious when somebody seems to be all in on protectionism on flimsy reasons.
And here's Robert Lighthizer, President Trump's former trade chief, arguing that tariffs are necessary.
China, to me, is an existential threat to the United States. It is a very, very competent adversary. China views itself as number one in the world and wants to be that way. They view us as in the way. They have the biggest army in the world, and they're growing it, the biggest navy in the world, and they're growing it. They're spying on us. They're taking our technology. They've been waging an economic war against the United States and winning that war for at least the last 3 decades.
So your tariff regime for China would be what?
I believe in strategic decoupling. I'm not saying no economic relationship with China. That's not my position at all. I think you want balanced trade. And how do you get balanced trade? You're going to get balanced trade by having large tariffs on most of what they send to us.
These experts have presented both sides of the argument, and we would like to hear from you. Do you think tariffs are a good negotiating tool that will further strengthen America's standing in the global stage? Please drop your comments below. Before we progress further, let's take a brief journey down memory lane to the 2018 US-China trade war and the consequences on everyday Americans. The 2018 US-China trade war was one of the most significant economic conflicts in modern history. The US-China trade war was one of the most significant economic conflicts in modern history. It involved hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs on imports and exports, affecting a wide range of industries and everyday consumers. While the stated goal was to reduce the U.S. trade deficit with China, bring back American manufacturing jobs, and curb China's unfair trade practices, the impact was far-reaching and complex, leading to price hikes, supply chain disruptions, and job losses in some sectors. One of the most immediate effects of the tariffs was the increase in prices for imported goods. The U.S. imposed tariffs on $550 billion worth of Chinese goods, covering everything from electronics and clothing to appliances and furniture. Since businesses had to pay higher costs for imports, they passed these costs on to consumers. Everyday Americans felt this impact in the form of more expensive electronics, smartphones, laptops, and TVs from brands like Apple and Dell saw price hikes. Higher grocery bills, some food products, including seafood, nuts, and meats, became more expensive. Costlier home goods, furniture, appliances, and even basic goods like clothing became pricier due to tariffs on Chinese imports. But the trade war was not completely negative. While it had many negative effects, it also had some benefits for certain American industries, businesses, and government revenue. One of the primary goals of the trade war was to encourage companies to produce more goods in the U.S. instead of relying on China. While this didn't happen across all industries, some American manufacturers benefited from reduced foreign competition. The steel and aluminum industries, in particular, benefited. The U.S. imposed 25% tariffs on imported steel and 10% tariffs on aluminum to protect domestic producers. As a result, U.S. steelmakers like U.S. Steel and Nucor saw profits increase, allowing them to expand operations and hire more workers. In other industries, companies brought jobs and production back to the United States. Major companies like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, and Intel announced new investments in U.S. chip production. While many companies moved from China to other countries like Vietnam and India, a portion of production was relocated to U.S. factories. The trade war also strengthened U.S. leverage in trade negotiations. For one, it forced China to negotiate on some of its unethical trade practices, including intellectual property theft and the promotion of unfair trade competition by issuing subsidies to state-owned businesses. So, while many might say the trade war was a complete disaster, others believe it helped in many ways, including boosting U.S. manufacturing in key sectors, forcing China to negotiate on trade, generating government revenue to support affected industries, and reducing dependence on China for critical goods. back to today's reality. If another global trade war starts between the US, China, and possibly European countries, what does that mean for you and your finances? How does this all connect to your day-to-day life? Let's break it down. Think trade wars are just for Wall Street and big corporations? Think again. They affect your paycheck, your grocery bill, and even your retirement savings. The truth is that tariffs are a hidden tax on everyday Americans. The price of your groceries, the cost of your next car, and even how much you'll pay to upgrade your phone might increase significantly. Let's break down exactly how this could play out, using real economic history as our guide. 1. Higher prices on everyday goods. When the US imposes tariffs on imports, companies don't just absorb those costs, they pass them straight to consumers. We saw this during Trump's 2018 tariffs on Chinese goods, which made products like washing machines, refrigerators, and electronics significantly more expensive. A Federal Reserve study found that Americans, not China, paid nearly the entire cost of those tariffs in the form of higher prices. Expect to see the same thing now. Tariffs on China mean that everything from smartphones to furniture to car parts will get more expensive. 2. Job losses and economic slowdown. While tariffs are mostly designed and imposed to protect local jobs and businesses, this might not always be the case. An example is the 2002 steel tariffs under President George W. Bush, which were designed to boost U.S. steel manufacturers. They ended up costing around 200,000 American jobs in industries that relied on steel, from auto manufacturers to construction firms. Now, with higher costs of raw materials like aluminum and steel, U.S. companies in sectors like manufacturing and retail will have to make tough decisions. Some will lay off workers, some will cut wages, and others might move operations overseas to avoid the tariffs altogether. 3. Farmers could take a massive hit, again. Agriculture always ends up in the crossfire of trade wars. In 2018, when China retaliated against Trump's tariffs, it specifically targeted American soybeans, corn, and pork, crippling U.S. farmers. The government had to step in with a $28 billion bailout just to keep farms afloat. Now, if China, or even the BRICS nations, decides to retaliate again, expect farmers to be squeezed once more. That could mean less produce on store shelves, higher grocery bills, and even farm closures. 4. Stock market volatility. Bad news for 401ks and investments. If you have money in the stock market, whether through a 401k, mutual funds, or individual stocks, you felt the impact of Trump's last trade war. The uncertainty sent markets tumbling multiple times, wiping out billions in investor wealth. Now, we could see a repeat of market turbulence, particularly in sectors that rely heavily on global trade, tech, automotive, agriculture, and manufacturing. If tariffs escalate into a full-blown trade war, the market could take another hit, dragging down retirement savings and investments. So, what's the solution for everyday investors who wish to protect their assets? When stock markets fall, investors look for stability in safe haven assets like gold and silver. Gold has long been seen as a hedge against market turmoil, and during past trade disputes, we've seen gold prices spike as investors shift away from riskier assets like equities. In 2018, when Trump's tariffs on China triggered market sell-offs, gold prices jumped nearly 8% in 6 months. During the 2008 financial crisis, gold prices surged over 24% in a single year as investors fled collapsing markets. If the US-China trade war deepens, history suggests gold could see another rally, making it an attractive asset for those seeking protection from economic instability. Secondly, tariffs can fuel inflation, and gold loves inflation. Tariffs drive up the costs of goods, leading to higher inflation. Since gold is often seen as a hedge against inflation, its price tends to rise when the purchasing power of paper currency declines. During Trump's last round of tariffs, inflation in key sectors, especially consumer goods and manufacturing, began creeping up, pushing investors toward precious metals. If this trade war escalates and inflation picks up again, gold and silver could benefit as investors look to preserve their wealth. Additionally, if the trade war weakens global confidence in the U.S. economy, the dollar could lose strength, making gold and silver more attractive. Silver, on the other hand, is a unique case because, Unlike gold, it has both safe haven appeal and industrial demand. Since tariffs can slow economic growth, industrial demand for silver, which is used in electronics, solar panels, and manufacturing, could decline, limiting price gains. However, if investor fear outweighs industrial demand concerns, silver could still rise alongside gold, as we saw in past market downturns. As the dust begins to settle, one thing is clear. A trade war between the US and China isn't just about tariffs and trade deficits. It's about shaping the future of global power and economic influence. Whether this clash leads to better deals, a stronger economy, or a drawn-out economic standoff remains to be seen. What's certain is that this unfolding drama will have ripple effects, not just for governments and corporations, but for every individual navigating an increasingly interconnected world. As we keep a close watch on the headlines and market moves, remember, in a global economy, every action has a reaction. Will cooler heads prevail, or are we on the brink of an economic conflict that could reshape the world as we know it? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching today's video. If you find this information valuable, hit the like button. It helps more people see it. Subscribe for more updates and turn on notifications so you never miss an important update about your finances. The next few months could reshape the global economy. Will we see relief, or are we heading into a financial storm? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's discuss.